actually found him through a Facebook page, and I brought him on because there was something that I noticed that I've been struggling with. And, being a black male, I've always had my chances to get my permit to carry. And I've always felt, I hate to say this, but I've always felt like that there's this true misconception that black males cannot be legal gun owners. And I've had people like Ken Diesel who said, he'll write the letter for me to go down and get it. Mark Chiappetta, who's a private detective, he said he would write that letter. But even though I had all of these people who would write letters for me, I still felt that there's this possible misconception that black males would not be approved of a gun permit. And then I seen this guy, Pierre, out here. He's actually a certified NRA instructor. He has his own business. He's teaching students how to properly use a firearm, and he is a black male, just like me. So right there, I'm like, wow, this is a guy that's blowing that misconception completely out the window. I've got to get him on, because what drives me crazy is when you see all these young guys with gun crimes and caught with illegal guns and doing mandatory time, because Ken's a defense attorney. Pierre, I'll let you know, Ken's a defense attorney, and R. Squared is actually a JAG officer, retired from the military. It's one of these things that bug me and say, why didn't these guys just go and get a legal gun? And that's one of the things that bug me. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and we can get right into it.
Hey, how's it going? It's Pierre from SalomonFirearms Training. I'm the founder and CEO of SFT. To answer your question, why don't people just go ahead and get a legal firearm? It really baffles me. I think it has to do with like you said, the misconception that the Second Amendment only applies to, white males, white conservative males. And it's simply not true. It's very easy to get your license here in Mass, even though the Northeast is generally known as an anti-gun state. You just got to dedicate one day of your life, take a 5-hour safety course where you learn about firearms, the law, how to load, unload, and then you get your certificates. So once you get those certificates, you go ahead and you apply at your local police department, and then in a matter of a couple months, you should be able to get, some version of a license to carry. So there's this misconception that it's very hard to get, when in fact it's pretty easy to get some form of a license to carry or firearms identification card that allows you to buy firearms and ammunition.
I'm going to ask Ken this question, because Ken, we're talking almost 15 years ago. We talked about me getting a gun permit, and you said exactly what he just said. You said it's a misconception. You told me that, right, Ken?
Oh, absolutely. The procedure, especially here in Massachusetts, is very straightforward. Actually, back when I got my permit, I actually had to go down to the police station to pick up my application. Now you don't have to do that. You can sit at your computer and fill it out. Some police departments will allow you to file it online, although I don't believe Brockton's one of them. The problem is, and this is the problem, the actual applying for, in Massachusetts, let's go, there's 3 levels. There's an LTC Class A, LTC Class B, that's License to Carry Class A, License to Carry Class B, and a Firearms Identification Card. And the distinctions, at least right now, are not that important. Mainly it deals with whether you can carry it concealed, open, and whether you can just own a firearm. The problem is, there are 2 problems here, especially in Massachusetts. Every municipality police chief has absolute control over who he issues a firearms permit to. Number 2 is, especially in Massachusetts and federally too, there are restrictions for people who have had, let's say, involvements with the court system. For example, if you've had a restraining order issued against him, you cannot get a license to carry in Massachusetts. If you've been convicted of domestic violence, you cannot get a firearms permit. If you've been convicted of certain crimes, you cannot get a firearms permit. And the problem is, statistically speaking, young black males are more likely to have interactions with police that result in a criminal conviction or a criminal notation on their record than whites. And that's disproportionate to their population. So while I agree with our guest, the procedure is very straightforward and simple. I mean, anybody with a 3rd grade mastery of English can file an application. The chances of you getting one, I think, break down along racial lines, especially socioeconomic grounds. The poorer you are and the more of color, the lower your chance are of getting one. And that's
and I'm going to play devil's advocate here before I let R Squared chime in. A a lot of people are going to look at Pierre, a lot of the brothers that are on the street and all that stuff, so to say. They're going to say, well, Pierre's able to do what he did because he was in the military. He's an Army sergeant. He's a vet. That's why he got this. And again, like I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. That people are going to say that that's why he was able to get this permit and be able to teach. R squared, you were in the military for 23 plus years. Misconception, right?
Yeah, it could be a misconception. I mean, the biggest thing that we have is, of course, every state's going to be different. And then, as Diesel pointed out, you've got some local municipalities that are going to claim some control, too. So sometimes it can make it hard to navigate. I think, as was described, the problem wasn't necessarily the rule structure that we have, because for the most part, I think a lot of people can understand that people who've been convicted, not accused, but convicted of violent crime, maybe shouldn't be the ones who own weapons, or at least should have restrictions on their ownership. That seems to be a fairly popular, acceptable restriction as opposed to other things. The problem is, then you look at the impact that may have, as Diesel says, socioeconomically, racially, or otherwise. That's not an intended consequence. That's a reflection of the rule as passed. So the question that just goes to a whole criminology and sociology problem that society has to deal with in the big picture for a lot of reasons. But I'm not, that's an unintended consequence when it comes to gun ownership. But at the same time, there are certain classes of people we want to be extra careful with.
Now, Pierre, your class consists, now say like me, like I said, for the longest time, I've wanted to get my gun permit, to, my firearm license to carry. And every time I've gone to do it, I put it off, and I hate to say it, but I felt, again, that misconception, and I've also felt uncomfortable with who may be that teacher of that course or whatever. I've had people that I reached out to, but they're out of town, and, again, how do I go into this and feel comfortable? Because it's not just a misconception. I also have worries as a gun owner and owning a gun and the responsibility. I have 6 kids in the house. So again, you see all these stories, you see all these tragedies, and you say, accidents happen. I know that I got to lock my gun up and keep it in a place. My buddy at work, he says, Keith, it's no problem. You can get a gun that only unlocks on you and your wife's fingerprint, and things like that. What would you tell me as a male who's looking to possibly get his gun permit? What would I have to do to make me feel comfortable?
Well, I think the issue's on 2 parts. I think, one, when you look at the black community, the relationship that we have with firearms is not healthy, right? So when you look at people that are black and that have guns, a lot of times people look to like rap videos and movies and stuff like that, and they show someone who's not the ideal candidate, dealing with firearms, irresponsibly or criminally. And then when you look at the commercial, like if you ever gone to if you look at like a firearm commercial or video or stuff like that, you often, rarely find people of color in that video. So when you turn on your TV and then you're looking at videos and stuff like that, you can, it's hard for you to find people that look like you. So people have a hard time correlating with that. First thing I would say is try to be objective. So even if you don't try to feel comfortable, the most important thing is getting your license to carry, right? So once you get your card, then you can go ahead and participate with the 2-way. The other thing too, like with the evolution of technology and social media, there are a lot of like black gun groups online now. And I'm a training counselor, so what I have is the ability to create other firearm instructors. And one of the things that I've been doing is been targeting, people of color to say, hey, you can get this done, you can become an instructor, and you can start taking charge in changing that narrative of, who a legal gun owner is, and if you're black, if you can take it. So instead of waiting for the public or, mass media to go and put representations of people that look like me, I'm creating those stories. I'm going to the community. I'm teaching classes in Dorchester and Rosendale, in places where, I've had people tell me, hey, I live in Dorchester, I can't get a license to carry. I'm like, that's not true. You can be from anywhere. The Second Amendment applies to all citizens of this country. So I think, one, we got to take charge of our community and start building a healthy relationship, starting for children young, because other communities are doing the same thing. If you look at white kids in suburban areas, they go hunting with their dad and their grandfather and stuff like that. Why can't we start building that healthy relationship and mindset with our children in our community, so that when they do become teenagers and stuff like that, they're not going to get involved in criminal activities and things that could potentially set them up and in a situation where they can't legally own firearms. So I think it's a two-phased two-phase solution to that. But there are plenty of black instructors out there. Google is making things very easy now, so going on social media and going on Google, and and applying that same thing. People look and will Google all the ridiculous things, but when it comes to something simple as to the steps to getting your license to carry, you can go to mass.gov, you can go to Google, and you can start getting some of those answers. While it might not answer all your questions, but it's a good start. It'll get you some phone numbers, it'll get you some websites where you can start doing your own research and finding out what you have to do and what communities are acceptable of you.
Oh, great stuff. And I got to let Ken chime in here because, as I said, Ken's a defense attorney, and I know Ken's defended a lot of young guys with these, these crazy gun charges. Ken, have you ever looked at some of these guys and said, hey, idiot, why were you carrying to begin with? Why didn't you your record was clean prior to this? Have you ever said to somebody, why didn't you just ever get a permit to carry? Have you ever thought about saying that or had said that to anybody?
Only in days ending in Y.
Why that? Explain that, please.
Pretty much what you just said is what I ask and what I tell every single generally young men. There are very few young women who carry weapons, but basically it's young men, and a lot of them are people of color. And I've said that, I said, look, you're 23 years old. You got a few things in your record, but nothing major. Maybe an OUI, maybe you got an assault and battery, which you quaffed out, which continues without a finding, it's form probation. You're going to Massasoit Community College, you're a high school graduate, you're a good athlete, you seem good, you're coming from a nice family, you got people who will support you. It's like, why didn't you just file for a permit? Maybe they won't give you the license to carry the concealed weapons permit. Maybe they'll give you an FID and you go join a gun club and take some instruction from, the staff sergeant over here or somebody else like that, and work your way up. Why the hell are you walking around Brockton of all people, all places, with the a SIG 40 or a Glock 9? Are you out of your freaking mind? Because every cop out there, that's their number one concern. You ask any cop, if you had Z-Man up here, what is your main safety concern? And that is some kid with a gun shooting me. I mean, I've had that conversation so many times, it's not even funny.
And the funny thing is some of these guns that some of these kids are carrying, or some of these young guys are getting caught with, they're not very expensive guns. Some of these guns are, they range from $350 to $500 for some of these guns, yet they're throwing their lives away and getting mandatory sentences over something that if they had no record, if they had wanted to just carry legit, they could do so. So for me, a black male with no record, right now I hear a lot of different ways people tell me to carry a gun. People tell me to go and get sport and recreation. But somebody said because of what my wife does and because what I do, we can both probably get a license to carry for protection. Because she works in the medical field and she deals with, she at one time she was dealing with rehab facility and she had to walk to her car and things like that. So as being an instructor, what would you advise me to go for as a homeowner, and because of what we do for employment and the fact that we have 6 kids in the house, what would you say? Do I go for sport and recreation or do I go for the whole thing?
Well, I would always advise that you go for a license to carry Class 8 unrestricted. So what you want to do is you want to have options. You never want to restrict yourself to target shooting and hunting. If you live in Boston and you live in Brockton, what's the probability of you going out and hunting? Right? It's very low to zero. So you always want the ability to protect yourself outside the home. When you get a restricted license, it only allows you to keep that firearm in the home. So while you might be able to protect your family inside the house, but when you leave and you want to carry and you're going out to a late night dinner, with your wife, or if you're coming home late or you're carrying large sums of cash, you definitely want to have that ability to protect yourself outside the home. So you always want to go for a Class A unrestricted. The other issue that I think too is like some of the major organizations, they're playing too much into the politics. Like for example, over the last presidential election, right, the NRA, which is the largest and oldest Second Amendment organization that protects our rights, many people of color don't want to take the class. So a lot of times when I'm, promoting the NRA course, I'm not just simply promoting a firearm safety course. I got to promote and defend the NRA and say, hey, while you might not agree with the NRA politically, you do have to understand that their certificates are recognized nationwide. So I have this extra step where I have to ask people to remove their emotional and political feelings to take these courses marches, and there's not a lot of different options. There are some organizations like NAGA, National African American Gun Association, that's just coming up, but they're only 2 years old and they're not on the same level as the NRA, so they still have a lot of catch up to do because they got over a century of catch up to do. So it's the politics becoming to the 2A. It's no longer just about firearm safety. Now it's about, okay, you got to pick sides. Are you Democrat? Are you Republican? And when you divide people like that, you don't have that unity. When you look at rallies, last year when Maura Healey banned all semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, and I went to that rally to defend the Second Amendment, I can count the black people on my fingertips. They didn't have a stake in the fight. So if we want to change the two-way, we definitely have to be more inclusive. And I think that has to do a lot with the bigger organizations saying, hey, we're not going to pick sides, and it doesn't matter if you're Democrat. Why do you have to be Democrat and anti-gun? Why does that have to be synonymous? You should be able to be whatever political party and still be represented and support the Second Amendment. So I think the bigger organizations have a responsibility to be inclusive for everybody and make everybody feel welcome. Because I know a lot of black people don't feel welcome when they go into NRA course. And there's been some clubs that I went to, and I go to the annual meeting and I'm the only black guy there. So until I started creating other black instructors, I didn't know any black instructors. So, and I think that's people in power, people who have influence, they definitely have a responsibility in changing that narrative.
If I may jump in one here, I'm probably the most outspoken liberal of the group here. I will refrain from my opinions of the NRA political wing, which are hard. But I will say this: I received my instructions from two NRA instructors. One of them was a very good friend of mine, is a Marine Corps veteran, and another instructor who's a Boston cop. Say what you want about the NRA's political side, and I could spend all night talking about it. When it comes to firearms instruction and firearm safeties and firearm protocols, if you were just to take that out and take off the NRA label and you just listen to what they have to say or read their pamphlets or read their articles or read their manuals, you would think Handgun Control Inc. was writing them. They are very, very good. They're exceedingly safety conscious. They are the people. I remember I was talking to one NRA instructor one time. He goes, "Are you sure you're with the NRA? Because you don't sound like it." Because they are very, very, very conscious of the requirements and responsibilities of proper firearms ownership. As a matter of fact, one of the people who taught me it, the first thing he suggested was your first purchase should be a trigger lock, and either get a safe or a small gun locker, and then go out and get the firearm. That's what he told me, which is kind of interesting. Because these guys really know their stuff, and a lot of them are ex-military, like our guest here. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And they see the damage these things can do up close and personal. So I think it's a vested interest. And if I may say something, I belong to two firearms. I'm trying to avoid the word gun, because the colonel will scream at me, because in the military, a gun has a big connotation as to what a gun is versus a firearm. Because in the military, you both probably say a gun is a weapon capable of a certain radius caliber shell. The rifles and pistols they use are known as firearms. I'm surprised you guys haven't jumped in on that. I don't think there's a non-white person in either one of my clubs, and I don't think that's right. It just one's based in Weymouth, and one's based out in Harvard, which is Central Mass. But maybe that's changing.
And we're actually in the chat right now, and it's funny because I just asked R Squared if he has a license to carry, if he's a gun owner, because he is a veteran of the military, and he says no. He says he was actually saying he was thinking about it, and I just said, wow, that would be a pretty neat radio show, social experiment. If me and Rob got together, thought about it, talked about it, and then we said, you know what, let's try this as a social experiment so everybody can see, and then we would both apply. We would get whatever we would need. But again, you're in Florida, right, R Squared?
Yeah, Florida, so it wouldn't work quite the same way. I think the state's just a little bit easier than Massachusetts.
Yeah, so Ken, what would you say? No? That's a no-go because of Massachusetts?
But you never know, because down south it may be harder for you still.
Well, R Squared here has a lot of Mass contacts. His family's from here. So maybe he's like, try to gain mass residency and go through the application process. Because you can apply as a non-resident. It's very difficult, but you can apply.
And would you advise something like that for him, or would you say stay in the state?
I would say stay in Florida because I'm not sure.
Yeah, because you need to comply with the state where you're going to be residing with the weapon.
Right, exactly. I don't know Florida. They may be one of those states where you only need a permit if you want to carry concealed. Like, for example, New Hampshire and Colorado, if you have a pistol below a certain magazine capacity, you can walk around with it as long as you're not waving around to someone, but you can put it on your hip or put it in your car as long as it's out in the public without a permit. If you want to carry concealed, that's when you need the permit. Unlike Massachusetts was, if you want it all, you need a permit.
Now, we've got Pierre Solomon on. He's on with us. I'm going to let him get into his website and stuff like that to let people know the information, because I know there's a lot of people that are listening in and want to know. But before we get him out of here, I want him to walk me through the steps of exactly what I should do, what I should prep for, how many classes would I need to take, because I'm really thinking about signing up with your course with the wife. And I just want you to walk me through the steps and what I would need to do. And I want to give people a cost and all that type of stuff.
All right, well, you should definitely come take our class. We hold the classes anywhere in the state. We always tell people we have our headquarters here in Swansea, but we'll go anywhere. So if you have a minimum of 5 people, we'll come to your house, we'll come to your living room, and we'll teach the course.
Oh, shoot.
So all we really need is a table and a TV, and then we'll come out and we'll do the classroom portion, and then we'll link up to do the range. So as far as mass requires, right, there's a variety of courses that qualify for your license to carry, but the most popular one, and I think the most beneficial one, is the NRA Home Firearm Safety. It's a 5-hour course. It's $130. We include all the guns, ammo, and training equipment. So when you sign up for one of our classes, everything is included. You don't need to bring anything except for a pen and a notebook. Now, as far as do you need to take more than one course, not necessarily. So you technically need to take only one class, and then you can go and apply for a license to carry the next day. But as I always tell people, firearms training is a lifelong pursuit. There's nothing that you can do in one day and become an expert of it. So it's something you got to practice continuously. So we always advise people to take the additional courses that we have. So we offer a variety of classes, but technically all you do is you take that home firearm safety course. It will give you 2 certificates. It'll give you a state police certificate that you can use in mass, and then you get an NRA certificate, which is good nationally. So if you wanted to start applying into neighborhood states, you can go ahead and do that. You just got to be aware that each state has their own laws, and you just got to make sure you follow them. But the steps are pretty simple. The part where it gets a little bit complicated is whether you'll get a Class A unrestricted. So Mass used to have a Class A and Class B. Now they've gotten rid of the Class B level, and it's all Class A. So depending on your background or depending on where you live, you have these different colored zones. So you can have like a red zone, black zone, green zone. And basically what the colors represent is that if you live in a green zone, then you're a lot more likely to get a license to carry Class A unrestricted. If you're applying somewhere like in Boston, where I live, it's very hard to get a Class A unrestricted. Some people, which I believe it's a form of redlining, right? So if you look at all the states that have the negative colors, you can ask the question, what's the demographic of those areas? Are they, predominantly minority, or are they, Caucasian and other stuff like that? So some people will make the argument that the cities is a way to, to redline people of color. But yeah, depending on the city that you live, you have a higher or lower chance of getting a Class A unrestricted. So we always recommend people to go and get that Class A. And one of the best ways to increase your chances is to take multiple courses. So yeah, you only have to take that one basic course, but if you come in and say, hey, this was my basic requirement, but now I've done 2, 3, 4 courses, then it looks a lot more favorable, in your situation. Some cities also require you to have a letter of recommendation and stuff like that. Any student that takes our class, we offer a letter of recommendation from the company, so we try to help out in that way too. But it's pretty simple. You take the class, you pass, you get your certificates, and then the very next day you can go ahead and apply for your license to carry.
Sounds good. And you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook?
Yes.
Shout them out. Let them know where they can get in touch with you. And we'll make sure we have the links up in the podcast when we post the podcast.
Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate that. You can go on our website, www.SalomonFirearms.com. On Instagram, we're Solomon Firearms. On Snapchat, we're Solomon Firearms. On Facebook, we're Solomon Firearms Training, as well on YouTube. We post a lot of videos on YouTube, Facebook. We're pretty frequently, and we're open 6 days a week, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we teach classes pretty much anytime and anywhere. So wherever there's bodies, we'll go and we'll make sure that people are well trained and educated.
Great stuff, Pierre, Solomon. Good stuff. We usually do a 10-minute interview, but you were given some great information. All of us had some good questions for you. You were able to come through with some solid answers and give some people some solid instruction. And to be honest, you're getting me one step closer to getting comfortable in doing what I feel I should have done many, many years ago when I first met Ken. I was actually thinking about going through that process, and I kind of got nervous.
Can't think about getting a weapon
out of the water. So, I think
I got 5 of them, believe it or not. That'll just scare the hell out of you.
5.
Well,
That's
you know
it.
what? I'm a father of 6. And society is changing, and like I said, the wife has worked a job where we've had twice now, where we've had some instance, where we've had these situations where we've run into people, and it's like, yeah, this isn't a good situation. I bought mace for her, but again, mace only does so good at night, and I think maybe it's time for us to say, hey, we work these jobs, and we're involved with these people, and we need to protect ourselves. We have 6 kids that look for mother and father to come home, and I think it's just time to move forward, and it's just thinking about it. I think I'm going to move forward and go ahead. And Ken, I thank you for sending me the application, and again, Pierre, great stuff, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And thanks for your service.
Thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
No problem. And before Pierre gets off here, I actually linked Pierre with Oscar Mike Radio, Travis Partington. They've started some discussion there, and hopefully we will see more of Pierre on Travis's show, because I feel an Army vet, a sergeant veteran, I feel that he's got a lot more stuff that he can bring to Oscar Mike Radio, so hopefully we'll be able to see Travis and Pierre talk about some issues on Oscar Mike Radio. So thanks again, Pierre, for coming on.
All right, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care, man.
All right, you too, brother.
All right. Good stuff, man. Good. Wow. And, we talked about this show having a good flow.